We had no idea where we were headed. Having arrived at Santiago, Paul and I signed up for one of the tours of the great cathedral, which is the whole point of the pilgrimage, getting there. And so we signed up and began to follow our tour guide, who was speaking Spanish, so I was trying to stay kind of close so I could hear her, try to figure out what she was saying, and translate to Paul. And she began to lead us up a very narrow medieval stone staircase. And we went up and up and up and up, and suddenly she took a hard left. And as I followed her, she kind of ducked down and went through a doorway, and I was startled to see sunlight. Like, what? And as I stooped down and stood up, I realized, oh my, we're standing on the rooftop of the cathedral. Whoa! It was very impressive and very steep. You can see how steep that is? Well, of course, the views were amazing from up there. It was gorgeous. It was gorgeous. And there was a lot to learn. She had a lot to tell us about being on the roof, and we could see things that she described. But the main thing for me, what impacted me most, was looking down into the great plaza to which all the pilgrims would walk and enter and gather from way up there. And I thought, you know, I wonder if this is how God sees the pilgrims on their journey. Now, that idea of God being this old man with a long beard who sits up in the clouds watching, looking down on us, right? That kind of dies hard. But it does preserve the idea that God has a very different perspective from our own. And that's exactly what Isaiah, speaking for God, is saying to God's people. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways. Let that sink in. Just yesterday at our celebration of Donna Granico's life, a couple of people testified, but I heard it from the person who was involved. She was a dear friend of Donna's from here in Sacramento, and as Donna was nearing the end of her life, she went up and spent a week with her. And Donna loved playing cards. Some of you card players out there know this. And this friend played cards with her 2-3 times a day. And she said, she always beat me. But then she said, but you would never know it. Think about that. She always beat me, but you would never know it. Boy, when I think about it, that's not what I usually see down here at ground level, right? This is what I tend to see when I'm watching television or reading the news, something like this. I'm a pretty good winner. I'm a terrible loser. And I rub it in pretty good when I win. Anyone want to hazard a guess? Consider the source. Yeah. Isn't that what we see most often? It feels like things are shifting, and what we used to call sportsmanship has become so much less. Sometimes it's what money can buy. Other times it's just about domination or even destruction. Here's a higher bar. You learn how to be a gracious winner and an outstanding loser. Yeah. We hear you, Joe. But we're not all there. Our world we have constructed with winners and losers. And it seems like things get worse all the time. Win at all cost, winner takes all, take no prisoner, might makes right, scorched earth. And it's not even limited to the playing field anymore, is it? No, we see it everywhere. Everywhere. Like most of you, I have been watching closely for and the results of the Special General Conference in United Methodism that was held, and also the release of the General Council's report, and also the Brexit votes. And in all of those, each one of those, people have talked about those as though they have been bare-knuckle fights, right? Battles that will settle everything. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, have they settled anything? No. 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 In each of them, there are people who claim to be the winners and who call others the losers. And yet, none of them have any clear outcome at this point for anyone to celebrate. At last Wednesday's Lenten study, I asked, so when is it easiest for us to judge other people? And the answer came back, when we feel self-righteous. Isn't that the truth? Isn't it easiest for us to gloat when we feel like we're the winners because, God was on our side? Right? Isn't that the easiest time for us to look at others and to be intolerant and callous and dehumanizing? When God sets the table, all are welcome. When God sets the table, there are no reservations for the winners. And no one is turned away because they're called losers. When God sets the table, it is with the grace of Jesus Christ. All are welcome. When God's people were thirsty, God said, come to the waters, drink all you want. And when God's people were hungry, God said, come, buy wine, milk, no money needed. Just come, feast. When we gloat like winners, it's in that very moment that we forget who we are and whose we are. And we forget God's indescribable generosity for us in the first place. That's where our real joy is. That's what gives us our joy, not what we feel we have accomplished and can lord over others. Oh, have you seen it, brothers and sisters, from that rooftop perspective? The shallowness of human hearts must be shocking to God. On display in our news, on social media, wherever we find it. Jesus said, you have heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. My ways are not your ways. Remember when Michelle Obama shared about the struggle, about having that unique experience of their daughters growing up in the White House and being subject to all the vile public attacks on their father, his faith, his birth, and how they sat down with them always to help explain that the language, the hateful language that was being used, is not really the spirit of this nation, and how they could ignore the attacks on their father, and how, especially, they said, our motto is, when they go low, we go high. I was thinking that ought to be the Lenten discipline, spiritual discipline of the United Methodist Church this year, that we teach our children and one another, when they go low, we go high. Because that is where God is looking at us. God watches us. Don't forget that first God loved us, and God offers us all that God has without price. How can we lord anything over one another? I invite you to remember the indescribable generosity of God right here at street level, where pilgrims walk with one another. And remember that God depends on our generosity to be generous through us to others.